Hi everyone. Before I begin my story, I want to ask you something simple. If you enjoy true-to-life stories filled with twists, betrayals, and lessons, please take a second to hit the subscribe button. Your support truly means everything to me, and it gives me the courage to keep sharing pieces of my life with you. My name is Isabella Moore, and I'm 45 years old. I never thought I would be telling my story this way, to strangers across the world. But sometimes life pushes you into places you never imagined. When betrayal cuts you so deep that you feel you might never heal, you find ways to speak. And sometimes, telling your truth is the only way to take back your power. This is not just a story about betrayal. This is a story about love, trust, and the cruel games people play behind the mask of friendship. And it is also a story of revenge. Sweet, deliberate, and unforgettable revenge. For over 2 decades, I had a friend I thought was more than family. Her name was Lydia Benson. We met in our early 20s while working at a little bookstore downtown. She was funny, outgoing, always the center of attention. I was quieter, more reserved, the kind of girl who preferred books to parties. Somehow, despite being so different, we clicked. She pulled me out of my shell, and I gave her the steady friendship she always claimed she needed. Over the years, our bond grew stronger. We shared birthdays, secrets, late-night talks, heartbreaks, and dreams. When I married my husband Daniel, Lydia was right there beside me, wearing a bridesmaid's dress, smiling like she was truly happy for me. She laughed the loudest, danced the longest, toasted to our happiness. In all the wedding photos, she looks like the picture of joy. Daniel liked her too. He thought she was bold, entertaining, a little wild, but harmless. She became a regular at our house, joining us for dinners, holidays, even vacations. I thought nothing of it. She was my best friend. My sister in everything but blood. But now when I look back, I can see the cracks I ignored. Lydia always found ways to compliment Daniel. His smile, his work ethic, the way he dressed. Sometimes she touched his arm when she laughed. Sometimes her eyes lingered a little too long. My gut twisted, but I silenced it. She's your best friend, I told myself. She would never betray you. Oh, how naive I was. The first real sign came on an ordinary Tuesday evening, almost a year ago. Daniel had gone to bed early with a headache. I was sitting in the living room when my phone buzzed. Lydia often texted me, but this time, the message wasn't meant for me. I can't stop thinking about you. I know this is wrong, but I can't fight it anymore. At first, I thought she'd sent it to another man. Lydia was always chasing flings. But then I saw the name at the top of the message. Daniel Moore. My husband. I felt the air rush out of my lungs. My hands shook as I stared at the screen. It was like time froze, and everything I had believed about my life shattered in 1 second. My best friend. My husband. The 2 people I trusted most in this world. That night, I didn't confront anyone. Instead, I quietly deleted the notification, put the phone down, and walked into my bedroom. Daniel was asleep, breathing softly, as if nothing had happened. I lay down beside him, but I didn't sleep at all. My mind was spinning. My chest felt heavy. My world was cracking. The next morning, I looked at Lydia with fresh eyes. When she came over for coffee, she acted the same. Smiling, laughing, talking about her work. But now, I noticed every glance, every subtle touch, every spark in her eyes when Daniel entered the room. It wasn't my imagination anymore. I could see it clearly. She wanted him. For days, I stayed silent. I watched. I studied. I looked for signs in Daniel too. And I found them. His phone now had a password. He smiled at texts he didn't share with me. He started coming home later, making excuses about work. He seemed distracted, distant. When I asked him questions, his answers were short, defensive. The pieces were falling into place. But still, I didn't confront them. You see, I've never been the kind of woman who explodes in anger. No. I've always been patient. Careful. If they thought they could betray me, they were going to regret it. But not in a screaming match, not in some messy scene. No, I was going to let them dig their own graves. I was going to plan something they would never forget. And so, I waited. I smiled at Lydia when she came over, even when I saw her eyes flicker toward Daniel. I kissed Daniel goodnight, even when his lips felt colder. I played the part of the clueless wife, the trusting friend. Inside, though, I was building a storm. I started by checking little things. Daniel's receipts. His schedule. His calls when he thought I wasn't paying attention. I noticed gaps, hours missing, stories that didn't add up. And then I dug deeper. I created a duplicate key to Lydia's apartment. One day when she was at work, I went inside. That's when I saw it. On her nightstand, hidden in the drawer, was a photo of Daniel. My husband's smiling face in a frame, sitting beside her bed. And in her closet, one of Daniel's shirts. I recognized it instantly. I remember standing there, clutching that shirt in my hands, shaking with rage. It was no longer suspicion. It was proof. Proof that my best friend was after my husband. But the question still haunted me. Had Daniel given in? I needed to know. So, I set a trap. The next weekend, I told Lydia I was going to visit my sister in another town. I packed a bag, kissed Daniel goodbye, and drove away. But I didn't go to my sister's. Instead, I circled back and parked a few streets away from Lydia's apartment. Hours passed. My heart pounded in my chest. And then I saw it. Daniel's car. Pulling up to Lydia's building. He got out, looking around nervously, then went inside. I sat there in my car, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard they hurt. Tears blurred my vision. My stomach twisted. It was true. My husband had walked straight into my best friend's apartment while he thought I was gone. The betrayal was complete. But that night, I didn't confront them. Not yet. Because in that moment, I realized something. They thought I was weak. They thought I was blind, a fool, a woman who would crumble if she knew the truth. But they were wrong. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to cry in front of them. No. I was going to destroy them. Slowly, carefully, piece by piece. And they would never see it coming. After that night, the night I realized everything, my life changed forever. The quiet Isabella who used to sip tea and read books while trusting everyone around her was gone. In her place was someone who had seen betrayal up close and had decided she wouldn't be a victim anymore. I spent the next few days carefully observing both of them. Every interaction, every conversation, every glance was dissected in my mind. I needed to be certain of every detail before I acted. Because revenge, I had learned from life, was not something to rush. It had to be perfect. It had to hurt. Lydia continued to come over as if nothing had happened. She laughed, chatted, and complimented Daniel, always with that sly glint in her eyes. I could almost see her calculating, plotting. She had no idea that I had already discovered her secrets. Daniel, on the other hand, seemed nervous. There were little things, hesitant smiles, fleeting looks at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention, pauses in conversations, that betrayed his guilt. I kept my face calm, my tone light, my questions innocent. But inside, a storm was brewing. I decided to start subtly. First I created doubt. I would leave small accidental hints that I knew more than I let on. A text left open on my phone, a comment about loyalty, a casual question about trust. Tiny seeds planted to see how they would react. And they reacted. Lydia started looking over her shoulder more often. She would fidget when I walked into a room, laughter sounding forced. Daniel avoided eye contact more, his phone always in his hand. Both of them were on edge, and it was delicious to watch. I knew the next step had to be bigger. Evidence. Solid proof. Something that would make confrontation inevitable. I began documenting everything. Photos, recordings, notes. Every time Daniel went to Lydia's apartment, I was there in spirit, capturing everything without them realizing. I became a shadow, invisible yet vigilant. It was exhausting, but every hour spent added to my arsenal. And then, I found something else, a small, almost meaningless object, but it told the story perfectly. A bracelet. Daniel had given it to Lydia during a friendly visit. I saw it on her wrist in a casual photo she had accidentally left open on her social media. It wasn't just a trinket, it was proof of intimacy, of secrets shared behind my back. The satisfaction I felt was cold but undeniable. I was finally in control. One evening, I decided it was time to escalate. I invited Lydia over for coffee, alone. Daniel was at work. She arrived, smiling, chatting about trivial things, completely unaware of the trap I had set. I made small talk, laughed softly, and then subtly placed a photo frame on the table, carefully angled so she could see it. It was a photo from one of our earlier trips together. Daniel and me, happy, laughing. But I had added a small sticky note behind the frame, something she would notice only if she looked carefully. It read, "Do you remember loyalty?" Her eyes flickered toward it, just for a second, but I saw the panic. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her hand twitched ever so slightly. That tiny moment told me everything. Fear, guilt, awareness. I continued with subtle provocations over the next few weeks. I made accidental comments about trust. I left books open with passages about betrayal and revenge. I wore Daniel's favorite shirt one day when he came home, a shirt I knew Lydia would notice, just to see her reaction. And react she did. The jealousy, the tension, the panic. It was intoxicating to watch. She started calling me less often, canceling visits, avoiding eye contact when she saw me. Daniel tried to defend her sometimes, but I could see the cracks in his resolve. Meanwhile, I carefully built an exit strategy. I wanted to ensure that when I finally confronted them, it would be public, undeniable, and unforgettable. I contacted a private investigator, just to confirm the timeline, the visits, the texts, the meetings. Every detail was logged, time-stamped, and recorded. Nothing could be denied. Weeks passed, and the tension in the house was almost unbearable. But I kept my composure. I played the part of the trusting, innocent wife. I smiled, I laughed, I acted. And yet, beneath that calm exterior, I was preparing the storm. Then came the day I had been waiting for. Daniel had a meeting that would keep him out for hours, and Lydia, oblivious to the setup, came to our house under the guise of borrowing some notes she had left behind. I welcomed her in, smiling warmly, offering her coffee. She sat, nervously tapping her fingers. It was time. I casually mentioned, "You know, Lydia, I always thought trust was the most important thing in any relationship. Friendship, marriage, everything." Her eyes darted to mine, then quickly down. "Yes, trust," she said softly, voice barely steady. I leaned forward, smiling. It's funny. Sometimes people forget that loyalty isn't just about being honest in the moment. It's about who you are when no one is watching. Her face paled. Her hands shook as she reached for her coffee cup. I sipped mine calmly, watching her unravel. "Isabella, I don't know what you mean," she stammered. I put down my cup. "Oh, Lydia, I think you do. And I also think you know that some things, once seen, can't be unseen." Her breathing became shallow. I could see the wheels turning in her mind, panic mixing with guilt. She realized she had been caught. That was only the beginning. I had planned the confrontation to be subtle but absolute. I had recorded some conversations, backed up photos, proof that Daniel had crossed lines. But I didn't reveal everything yet. I wanted to break her down slowly, make her feel the fear and the consequences of her actions. Over the next hour, I let her sweat, let her panic, let her imagination run wild. I asked pointed questions. I referenced tiny incidents she thought I hadn't noticed. I smiled as she tried to defend herself, faltering more with each word. Every lie, every excuse, crumbled under the weight of her own fear. Then I ended the meeting casually saying, "You should go, Lydia. Think about the choices you've made. And the bridges you've burned." She left, stumbling slightly, eyes wide, voice barely audible. I watched her go, knowing the storm had only just begun. After she left, I called Daniel. He was confused, nervous, almost pleading. "Isabella, what happened?" I didn't answer immediately. I let him squirm. "Do you remember what loyalty is?" I asked softly. He swallowed hard. I could hear it over the phone. "Isabella, I hung up. Let him think, let him feel. Let him understand the depth of his betrayal." I spent that night alone, sipping tea, reflecting. The feeling wasn't sweet. It was powerful. I wasn't broken anymore. I wasn't scared. I was in control. And that power, that clarity, it was mine. From that moment on, everything changed. Lydia avoided our home entirely. Daniel was cautious, careful, aware that the trust we once had was now fragile, almost non-existent. And me? I became a woman who knew her worth, her strength, and the devastating effectiveness of patience combined with strategy. I still live with them, still act in the same spaces, smile at the same dinners, laugh at the same jokes. But inside, I carry a secret that they will never forget. The knowledge that I saw everything, that I knew everything, and that I was ready to act at the perfect moment. Life teaches lessons in cruel ways, but it also gives opportunities. And I took mine. So if you are listening, and you've ever felt betrayed, remember. Patience is a weapon, observation is power, and sometimes, silence is the most dangerous form of revenge. Before I go, a small reminder. If you've followed my story, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me share these real-life experiences and lessons, and it means the world to me. The days after Lydia's last visit were filled with a tense quiet. The house felt different, charged, like the air before a storm. Daniel was more cautious, Lydia avoided contact entirely, and I moved through our home with the patience and precision of someone who knew exactly what they wanted. It was time. Time to finish what had begun. I had spent weeks preparing. Every detail, every interaction, every tiny piece of proof was in place. The confrontation would be public, undeniable, and calculated. It had to be flawless, because revenge isn't just about punishing someone. It's about reclaiming power, dignity, and control. The evening was chosen carefully. A dinner with friends who had known us for years. People who had celebrated with us, laughed with us, trusted us. Everyone would be present to witness the truth unfold. Daniel had no idea. Lydia thought she was clever, thinking I wouldn't dare expose anything. But she was wrong. She had underestimated me from the start. As guests arrived, I greeted everyone warmly, smiling, joking, the same Isabella everyone had always known. Inside, my heart raced. Not from fear, but from anticipation. Each second brought me closer to closure, to justice, to a reckoning. Dinner was served, conversations flowed, and laughter filled the room. Daniel sat beside me, unsuspecting. Lydia, seated across from us, looked tense, glancing at me occasionally with a mixture of confusion and unease. I knew she could feel it, the invisible net tightening around her. After the main course, I cleared my throat and called for attention. Everyone turned, curious, sensing a shift. I smiled politely, my voice calm, steady. I want to share something tonight, I began. Something personal, about trust, loyalty, and the choices we make when we think no one is watching. Lydia's hand twitched. Daniel's eyes widened slightly, a hint of recognition passing over his face. I've always believed that true friendship and marriage are built on honesty, on respect, on being there for each other through everything, I continued. But sometimes, the people closest to us forget these principles. Sometimes, they betray the ones who trusted them the most. A hush fell over the room. Lydia's eyes darted around, her panic growing. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I let the silence linger, watching every subtle reaction. And betrayal, I said, my voice soft but deliberate, isn't always obvious at first. It starts quietly. A look here, a word there, actions meant to be hidden. And if you ignore it, it can destroy everything you've built. I paused, letting my words sink in. Then, with a gentle motion, I reached into my bag and pulled out a small tablet, placing it on the table for everyone to see. On the screen were images, messages, timestamps, and photos. Texts between Lydia and Daniel. Proof of meetings, gifts, hidden conversations. Each piece was clear, undeniable, and carefully curated. Gasps filled the room. Lydia's face went pale. Daniel's hands trembled slightly. I watched them both, my heart steady, my mind sharp. You see, I said, voice controlled, measured. These aren't just coincidences. These are choices. Choices made while I was trusting, believing, loving. Choices that were meant to break me without anyone knowing. Lydia opened her mouth, stammering, but I raised my hand gently. Please, no excuses. No explanations. I think it's time everyone sees the truth for what it really is. One by one, I went through the evidence, explaining details, showing how I had discovered each secret, each meeting, each lie. The room remained silent, tension thick in the air. Friends and family were shocked, some in disbelief, others in sadness. Lydia's face crumbled. I could see the realization hitting her, that her actions had consequences she hadn't anticipated. Daniel's eyes were filled with regret and fear, understanding at last the gravity of what he had done. After I finished, I looked around at the gathered guests. Everyone understood the betrayal. No one doubted the truth. I felt a quiet satisfaction, not from cruelty, but from the clarity of justice. Then I turned to them, Lydia and Daniel, my voice calm, resolute. This house, this life was built on trust. And trust has been broken. But I am not broken. I am stronger. I am wiser. And from this day forward, I choose who stays in my life, and who doesn't. The choices you made have led to this moment, and now you must live with them. Lydia's eyes filled with tears. Daniel's shoulders slumped. I could see the shame, the fear, the guilt. And in that moment, I knew my message had been received. The rest of the evening passed quietly. Friends and family offered comfort, support, and words of encouragement. I felt their love, their understanding, their solidarity. And for the first time in weeks, I felt free, unburdened, empowered, and at peace. In the following days, I set boundaries. Lydia was no longer part of our daily lives. Daniel and I attended counseling sessions, rebuilding what could be rebuilt, learning how to trust again. It was not easy. Healing never is. But I had survived, and in surviving, I had discovered my own strength. I focused on myself, my passions, my hobbies, my friendships that were genuine. I learned that betrayal, while painful, could be transformed into a lesson. A lesson about vigilance, about intuition, about the power within myself. Months later, life began to feel normal again. Daniel and I rebuilt our bond slowly, carefully, brick by brick. Trust, once shattered, takes time to reconstruct, but it is possible when both parties are committed. And Lydia? She faded from our lives, a cautionary tale of greed and desire, a reminder of what happens when loyalty is abandoned. Looking back now, I see everything with clarity. Betrayal does not define the victim. It defines the betrayer. And revenge, when planned with patience and intelligence, can be a quiet, powerful force that restores balance and justice. I am Isabella Moore, 45 years old. I have faced betrayal, I have felt the sting of lies, and I have reclaimed my life. And if you, my listeners, take one thing from this story, let it be this. Never underestimate your own strength. Never ignore the quiet instincts that whisper warnings. And always remember, patience and intelligence are the most formidable weapons when confronting deceit. Life is not about being the victim. It is about rising, stronger, wiser, and more aware. As I end my story, I want to remind you once more. If you have followed my journey, if you've felt the tension, the suspense, the triumph, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support allows me to continue sharing real, raw, and transformative stories that teach, warn, and inspire. And to anyone listening who has been betrayed, or who fears the betrayal of those closest to them, know this. You have the power to take control, to see the truth, and to decide your own path. Trust yourself. Plan carefully. And never allow anyone to underestimate your resolve. The night ends, the storm subsides, and life continues. But I am no longer the same woman who once naively trusted everyone. I am Isabella Moore, and I have faced betrayal, reclaimed my power, and emerged victorious.